Hey everybody, it's me, Julie. I was thinking about doing some painting and I thought, you know what? I will record it and see what happens. I will tell you, I am not normally a content creator, so I will do my best to make sure you can see things. I think you can see everything you need to right here. And I will try to go slow. And the nice thing is, if I record this for you guys, you can pause the video and you can catch up or paint. You can watch the whole thing all the way through if you want to and then start, or you can go paint along and then pause as needed. So hopefully you'll find this helpful. But what I wanted to do was something similar to what we did. This painting here was the one we did, but change it up to something else that you can do using the same techniques. So this was the one we did, and we had, this was our inspiration picture, and we had like the sunset, sunrise, and we had to practice a little bit with the blending in the clouds and in the water and trying to do those kind of sideways strokes. We also did a lot of blending in the sand, and several of you expressed that you needed practice with the blending, or that was something that you struggled with. And a lot of you, like when we did the darker line back here and then blended it into the water, a lot of you said, you know, like, mine's not turning out that way, or you had harsh lines along here. And so I thought, let's find another picture that has some of those same techniques in it, but is also completely different, and we can get some practice in. So one of our dudes came up to me after the class, and he was showing me pictures from his vacation, and said, and I told him then, and we thought, like, that would be a really cool watercolor picture, and it would be very similar. Some of the ones he was showing me would be very similar to what we were doing in the class itself, so it wouldn't be that hard to flip it. So I've been thinking about that, and they were desert photos with the big cactus in them. And so I thought, I didn't have his exact pictures, but I thought we could find some. So I wanted to show you guys. I mentioned this in at least one of the classes, maybe all of them, but this is unsplash.com. And this is an internet source for photos, and there's also illustrations on here too, but mostly for the photos. And these are free to use. You don't have to worry about any licensing problems or anything. If you want to take a picture from here and use it to inspire a painting, you're good to go. So what I do is you can just type in whatever you want in the search box. And so yesterday I was playing around here with it. Well, now it's going to lock up because I'm talking to you. There you go. I typed in desert landscapes, and it'll give you some prompts as well. And you can see it just pops up all these images, and you can scroll through and see one that you like and you think you want to paint. You can click on it, check it out, and you can download. And the ones that have a lock on them, those are the ones from Unsplash Plus, which is a subscription service. But for the most part, if they don't have that symbol on them, they're all free to download. So when you click on them, you'll see download free in the corner. So you can find pretty much anything you want. Let's do flower. And maybe you wanted to do a Gerber daisy or something. There's everything you can imagine on here. And you can just scroll and scroll and scroll and find all kinds of things, inspiration for paintings, whatever it is you want to do. So yesterday, I was doing, I think I also tried, because those desert ones didn't quite look like what the pictures he showed me were. This was more like what we saw. And I thought, oh, okay, like, here we go, Arizona desert. And I wanted these kind of cactus. So look at this. This particular picture is a really good example. This is very similar to what we did with the beach photo. It's got that same, using the white of the paper is what we would do to create that. And this is all super dark. This would be done in browns and dark greens and even black and gray. You got your oranges and your yellows and your purples, but there's not a lot of detail to any of this. So this would be a very simple watercolor painting. It would be mostly about just sort of the abstract shapes, and you'd put a little bit more detail there, but oranges, yellows, purples, and you could make a really cool painting with that. Something along this line as well. Again, this one's more detailed because the sun is bright. You could do some kind of brush work down here. It wouldn't have to be super detailed. You're not going to paint every single leaf on these little bushes down here. Like, that's not going to happen. But you might want to be more detailed on, we definitely would want to capture like the stripes on these cacti. This would be your blue and your sky. You've got some purples in here for these mountains. You can see there's like, those are dark browns, tans, gold, where the sun is coming through. You could have some fun with this one. So there are several on here that were similar to kind of what he had shown me on his phone. You could also, you can see some of these are different times of the day. Look at the difference in this sky. There's not any technique difference as far as like how we did ours for the ocean. It's just clouds the same way we did before, except it's with dark purple, dark gray. Like, it's using a different color palette, more orange and yellow, but the technique as far as how to paint that sky is exactly what we did in our classes. So I thought that was kind of a good way to see that this is entirely different than our beachscape, but yet there are a lot of similarities. You can find pictures on here if you just want to do one cactus. If you like this picture and you like the scene, but you're like, oh, I really wanted it to be at sunset, make it at sunset. It doesn't have to be a blue sky. Put your orange and your yellow and your red and your purple and all the colors back there and make that a cactus at sunset. That's where your creativity and your artistic license comes in, because you can certainly combine this sky with that cactus if you want to. So, you know, you're only limited by your creativity and practice. So you can do even something, this one is really just focused entirely on that beautiful sky, and this is, you can't even tell what any of that is. So that's a really cool way to do another type of painting. And again, same thing like this one here. This one's really pretty. You would have a little bit of detail in the front, but this is really focusing on that beautiful sky and that background. So these are kind of fun. So what I did was I found one that I liked and I downloaded it for free, and so I have it on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch it out and then we will paint it. Now, I also showed you in class something that you can do if you struggle with the drawing part of it. So let's say that we downloaded this picture. You can, if you have an iPad like mine, I have a program called Procreate, and you can actually pull the picture up, and I use my Apple Pencil and I could trace it if I wanted to. You can do that if you have certain programs on your computer or your iPad. That makes things easy. What I did for our patterns that we used in class was I printed them, and then I took this paper, just plain paper, and I laid it over top, and I put it on a light box. But you can also use your window. If the sun is shining through it, you can put it up against the window and the light will shine through and you can trace your picture. And so that's what I did. I used a light box and I just traced the basics. You do not need to draw every single thing. You might need to trace, for the desert ones, you might need to trace your cacti, or at least some of them. I wouldn't sit here and try to draw every single bush if you were going to do one of those ones that has all the bushes and the other, you know, flowers and things in it, you might, the general shape of those mountains, the ones that you're going to include, that sort of thing. If there's a road going through it, you might want to trace that, but it really should be, this goes to a very simple outline. You don't need a lot of detail. And remember that sometimes with the pencil, less is more, because you don't want to have to deal with trying to erase a whole bunch of stuff. And remember, again, to go very lightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I can either print this out or print my desert picture out and trace it, or I can just freehand draw it. Oh, and then the other thing was, remember, once we do that, if you're wanting to get it onto your paper, you can either use carbon paper, which is fairly inexpensive. This one's from Michael's, but that is just this carbon paper, and you put the shiny side down, and you can trace over top of it. This erases fairly well on watercolor paper. You do need to go lightly on it. You don't want to go super dark, because it is a little bit harder to lift otherwise. But you can do carbon paper, or you can do our carbon paper trick, which we did, somebody did on this one. Just shade it with pencil. Get that lead on there, and then when you turn it over and you trace over it, it'll give you a very light lead line on your paper, and that's an easy way to trace. Or you can freehand, so that's up to you. I'm going to pull up that, and I will pause the video and get that set up, and then we will get started on the actual painting. Okay, can y'all see that? This is the one that I decided on. It's pretty straightforward. It has a very similar sunburst here to, let me get that a little closer, to what we did with our beach scene. So I thought that was kind of cool, because we could play with that again. And then it has some of those rock formations, but they're not overwhelming. And we've got lots and lots of greenery, which I probably won't put in. The pictures that he showed me from his phone were mostly just a sporadic cactus here and there. There wasn't so much of this greenery. Obviously depends on the time of year. So I will simplify this quite a bit, but I liked the composition of it overall. This focus on really this guy here and a couple others. So we're gonna use this as our reference, but we're gonna modify it a bit. So I decided to just draw it. So I remember that we are going to not go and put our horizon right in the middle. I'm gonna go up above the middle of my page, and I'm going to draw my horizon line, and again, very, very lightly. I don't need it to be super dark. You probably can't even see it on the video, but that is where I want to go. I want to go up here above my middle is probably where my thumb is. So and I'm going to kind of keep it, move this where you guys can see the whole picture. Is that better? There we go. I think you can see it better there. So I, again, am going to kind of simplify this a bit. I'm taking a little bit of creative license, but I want to, I'm not focusing so much on the rock formations. I know that those are cool and everything, but I want to get that cacti in there, and that's really kind of where my focus is going to be. But these rock formations are cool, and they do lend, I guess, identifiable, like where you're at. If you see these rock formations, people will be like, oh yeah, that's Arizona. So I am going to kind of try to mark out at least a little bit where they are, and then I'm gonna kind of just make myself a little bit of a drawing here. I don't really want to be super detailed with it, and I'm not even going to do this hill over here on this side, because I don't really want to. So I do want to do this kind of rough. I'm going to bring this guy up way up into my sky. And I think now that I've done that, I like it better like it is in the picture, with the rock formation being kind of over here to the side. So again, we're not having to do it exactly like the picture. I'm just going to kind of draw this out. Now, if you are printing this and you are tracing it, then obviously you're going to do whatever is there, and you're going to have a little bit different perspective, but I'm just showing you ways you can do it. And if you don't even like any of the pictures you find, which there's so many, like, I'm sure you'll find something, but if you want to do, like I showed you a couple that you could combine, you absolutely could. You could combine however many pictures as you want and create your own kind of desert scene. So I've got now, I'm going to make this one kind of behind there, and I've got my cactus. So I've got my big cactus, and then I think I'm going to have a couple of little ones. There was some little baby cacti coming up, and don't be afraid to go off the page, especially if you're not taping your work down and you are doing a unframed one. Definitely go off the page. Definitely do that. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put maybe a couple more, like they're off in the distance. So keep in mind your perspective when you're drawing these. This one is supposed to be up close to us, so it's going to be bigger. So if you're going to draw some of these other ones, you want to make sure that they are smaller so that it looks like they're off further away. You don't want it to look like you have this giant cactus, even though it is in real life really big, and if you were up close to it, this is further away from me, so it's going to be a lot smaller. And I know this is really hard for you to see the drawing. I'll move it up closer to the camera in a minute, but I just wanted to give you the idea of what you could do, and you can play with this to your heart's content. You can continue to add cactus. You can wait till the end and still be adding things. There's nothing to say that you can't change your mind a bunch of times. That is your prerogative as an artist, and I'm just going to kind of play with it. I may add a few more things in here, and then again I may not. I kind of was thinking maybe about a different, I don't know, there is a little bit of one of these round cacti, and I kind of prefer that. So I'm wondering if maybe I'm going to take that one off and do some of these other style of cactus. I like that kind of round one. That makes kind of a cool differentiation there between some of them. Like do one of those, and maybe more like some of these, the prickly pear style, if you wanted to add some other types of cacti into your painting, or you could keep it really simple. But I kind of like that round guy there with all the ridges, so I think I'm going to add one of those in there instead. So this is just an inspiration photo, but this is in general what we're going to do. Like I said, you can go to unsplash.com, you can print out your own, you can copy mine, you can do whatever you want. But can you see, this is just a really light sketch, nothing too crazy. I've drawn a little round one, another one in the distance. I've got my horizon and my mountains, and I've got my big cactus. So a little bit more drawing than what was on our beach scene, but There we go. So I will probably just leave my iPad open for myself and have that picture up while I'm painting, just to kind of remind me, or if you print it out, just to remind me of where things are and the colors and kind of the direction I was trying to go. But I know that I want to have my sun over here similar to what we did with the ocean seascape. So I want to have that sunrise kind of effect going on. So I am going to continue to have that in this similar spot to where we did the beach one. So now that I've got my drawing on, we're going to do just like we did with the beach, and we are going to start painting. Now we've got a lot of large spaces that we're going to fill in with that wet on wet technique. But again, we're going to do very much like we did with the seascape, in that we need to skip around, because we don't want to have our wet paint touch our wet paint and end up with a green sky, because we let our blue and our yellow of our desert combine and we end up with a big green line. So we definitely want to keep our colors separated and make sure that we are working and skipping around. So I'm going to use my, I don't know why that one doesn't have a number, the number 8 from the set that we got, and we also got this flat, and we got the number 2, the skinny. So I don't know that I will use all of them. I tend to use the 8 a lot, and that's what we did with the beach scene. But for some of the smaller cacti, I might use that skinny one. And if you're more comfortable with the flat brush for filling in large places, you can. I feel like I have more control with my number 8. I tend to use the round. If you came to the class back in June, you got this other set of brushes, and we even got this really big round. This is a number 12, and this is really great for filling in these large spaces because it's big. So if you came to the other class, you have that set of brushes, you can use that one too. But if not, otherwise we're going to use our number 8 for probably the whole painting, but I'll tell you if I switch brushes. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with the sky again. And so I am going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to wet everything right up to our horizon line, go around my rock formations, go around my cactus here. Remember, anything that's wet is where the paint's going to go. So if you don't want it to get painted, don't get it wet. So I'm going to get my whole sky wet. And remember, we're going for shiny wet, not sopping wet. So I don't want there to be puddles of water here, but I do want it to be shiny wet. Make sure I got the whole thing. And then our example painting, our inspiration photo, is a blue sky with that sunburst. So I'm going to remember to keep this part again white. And so I want to go in with yellow. Let me move my paintings over here. And I'm going to use that second yellow, that light yellow. And I'm going to concentrate that kind of same way as we did with the beach. I'm going to concentrate that around the sunburst. So I just put a lot of yellow on my paper, and I dipped my brush in water because that is really bright. And I know this was something that several people struggled with in the class, was they laid down the color and then they didn't know what to do with it. So I laid that down and it was way too bright for me. So I am dipping, move my water where you can see it. I am dipping in the water and dabbing my brush off, and then I am just using water to spread that yellow out. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. It's barely even yellow. If I want more yellow, I'll dip it in, and then I'm just going to use water to spread that out. And I want lots of yellow kind of around where the sun is going to be. Okay. So now I'm leaving this part white right here. And now that bright yellow that I put on there, I have watered it down and spread it out. And so I just dip in the water and I'm dabbing it off on my paper towel over there. So now I think I like third from the bottom. This very first blue is the one I think I'm going to use for the sky. And you can use whatever you want, but I'm going to do the same thing. I just put a lot of blue there, and now I'm just using water and I'm spreading it out. And I'm going to put more over here, but I'm going to rinse my brush off. I didn't even dab it off at that point. I'm just tapped it a little bit because I don't want to saturate things, because I do already have my paper wet. And I am just spreading that blue out. Now, remember what I mentioned before, you can always go back and add more color, but it's very hard to take it away. Right now, I could use a paper towel and I could dab some of this up, and that would work. I could take a paper towel and I could dab out some of the paint if I needed to, but you can see a little bit, like if I felt like that was too dark or I wanted it more splotchy or whatever, I could, and that took up some paint, but I can't go back once this is dry and remove that. But this sky is very light, and I definitely want more color in it than that. So I am going to want to add more color. Even once this is dry, I can go back and do that. I can add more to it. So go light the first round, and you can always add to it. Now I do know that I want the top of my sky to be a little darker and kind of have it fade out. So as you can see again, I'm kind of doing that same thing we did with the water. I tend to hold my brush sideways and just drag it. I'm getting that. And then you can fill in, because I do want it a little bluer. I want to have a pretty blue sky day going on here. We're going to have a pretty day in the desert. So I'm just bringing that blue. You saw I used a little bit of blue at the top, and now I am just using the water in my brush to bring that down. And I'm going to add a little bit more over here. My paper is obviously still wet, and so it is just blending out. I want to keep this area white, so I'm definitely not touching that part with fresh paint. I'm only touching this part with water, and I'm blending that in. And I'm not getting right up next to the yellow. Well, I'm getting right up next to the yellow, but not really touching the yellow, because I don't want a green sky. So I've got that. I think I'm going to add a little bit of the very first row, the orange that's on there. I'm going to add a little bit of some of this orange in here, because I would like this to be a little bit more colorful for my sunrise. But I want to kind of keep the roundness, so just use my paper towel. I'm trying to look at the camera and make sure that you guys can see that, but I lost a little there, so that's kind of, and again, we're not done with this. We'll come back and we'll add more to it, but I want to get that in. And I think maybe a little bit of that pinky purple color that we used. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, number 1 maybe. and also kind of, I just touched it there, and now I'm just going to take water and kind of fade that out. So it may not even show up on your screen, but it shows up for me that I've got a little bit of purple in there. Let me see if I can you see that there's a little tiny bit of purple around my white area. Okay. So we're gonna leave the sky alone for now because I want to move on. So we are not gonna paint. We're not gonna paint these rock formations next because they're touching our sky, and we don't want to go into our cactus that's in the sky either. So because we don't want to mess that up. So we're gonna start with our sandy area, and right now I want kind of that background color. So I think the desert sand is definitely a lot more orange than what we did our beach sand, but I do like that gold color, this third row, first one. I do like that gold color, at least as a base coat, because it is light, and so that would make a good background color that we can build on. So I'm going to do the same thing we did with the sky, and I'm going to wet the whole thing. I'm going to go around the cactus, all the cacti that I drew, and I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way, again, shiny wet, and take it all the way up to my horizon line, painting around my cacti. So if you filled your page with cactus everywhere, then you're going to want to paint around all of them with your water. So just going to get everything shiny wet. And I can see some dry spots there, so I'm just making sure that I'm filling it in and get in between any arms of the cacti that you drew, depending on how many you drew. Make sure you're getting in between there. Okay, and then I'm going to get that gold color, and I'm just going to start filling it in. I'm going to do the same thing as we did with the sky, and I'm going to drop color in, and then I'm just going to use water and fill in the rest with water. Like, I don't want it to be super saturated with color at first, because then I can come back and add more shading and different. We're going to add other colors to this, but I just want to get a good base coat on here. So I'm dipping back into my paint as needed, being careful around my cacti here, but I am not going super dark. I'm mostly going to re-dip in water. Oh, let me move my water over here again for you. Re-dip in water, re-dip in paint as needed. But a lot of what I'm doing is my wet paper, and I'm letting it do the work, and I'm just, you can see I haven't touched the paint again. I put the drops here, and now I'm just spreading that out. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I need to have a little bit more color, and I'm just spreading it with my wet brush. If I need more color, I grab some. If I need more water, I grab some. That went on heavily, so I definitely want to spread it out because I don't want that big blotch of gold there. So I am going to spread that out. Just use water as needed, paint as needed. I'm using just the tip of my brush to make sure to get in between and around these areas where I have my arms of my cacti here. depending on if you have a fan going in your area where you're painting, or the temperature if you're outside, obviously your paints are going to dry faster on your page, as well as in your palette, and so you might have to, you know, use more or less water, just kind of depending on the environment. But again, I like to start light. Some people prefer to go ahead and go dark. I think it comes with practice. If you're new to painting, then start light and then work on adding in. But I'm going to be using shading to capture some of the rocks and the, like in this picture, look at those rocks. I'm not going to go in and paint every single one of those cracks and crags and stuff, but you can see if I were drawing that, it's almost like a black line on all of those. And so we're going to want to create some of that shading with our watercolors, and so we want to be sure that we capture some of those shadows and stuff. And so that's what we're going to do by going light, by starting light. Then I'm able to go in here and add more color. That's the exact same color, but I'm adding it there, and I know that now I've created a little bit of a, maybe a mound of sand at the base of this cacti, right? Later we're going to add some shadows to the side of our cactus. If our sun's coming this way, our shadows are going to be this way, so we'll add some shadows on our sand. But right now I'm going to just kind of touch up any place that looks a little too pale using that same gold. And I'm kind of now starting to, can you see that, like make a little bit of a mound of sand maybe around the base of these all the cacti, maybe where it's a little bit darker. And I don't want it to be harsh lines, like I just drew a line, so I'm again blending it out. When I draw a line like that, then I just take my wet brush and I fade it out. See if I can show you up here. So I can draw a line there, that's very harsh. Now I'm going to just dip my brush in water, and I'm going to pick up the paint at the bottom of that and then just keep fading it out. I don't need it to be a harsh line, okay? Matter of fact, I don't want it to be a harsh line. Now, maybe you do. Maybe you're drawing a hill or something and you want that, then you leave it in there. But for us right now, that's not what we're doing. So now I've pretty much got my sand in there. While it is still wet, I want to start blending some of these other colors in. And I'm just going to play around. I think that that's one of the reasons why I recommended that you guys do, if you didn't do it in class, the first class was there early and had time, but do one of these color charts that you can lay next to your paint so you know what colors look like what once they're wet. But I've got a lot of oranges and yellows in these first few rows that I can mix in here, and I kind of like that second row, these last two, the dark orange and that red orange is really cool. And then on the third row, those last three are really good desert colors. So I'm probably going to use several of these oranges, and I'm going to do this third row, third one in, and we're going to try it out and see here. I want to try to add a little bit of, yeah, that's a really orangey. So I'm going to wipe off my orangey brown, kind of a brownish orange, really. And I want to kind of try to capture that rockscape there that we have in the front. So I'm just going to spread that out. And I'm not afraid, in this case, not the white of the paper, but the sand color that we have in the background showing through. I don't want it to be a solid orange block. I'm trying to capture some of that shading that we see in the rock formations. And so I'm okay with leaving some white spots, if you can see that. See how I've left some white spots there? So I'm okay with that. If I'm not okay with it later, we will fix it. Let's see if I move it. There we go. Maybe that's better. I don't have to keep picking it up. So now I'm gonna just keep doing that. I'm gonna keep playing with these colors. I like that orangey color, so I think we'll keep using that. But those rocks are rough. There's a lot of I don't know, different textures, I guess. There's a lot of bumps and dark spots and who knows what back there, but I want to try to capture that, but not super detailed, you know. And like if I get anything too heavy, I'm just gonna blend it in. Blend it out so it's not a harsh line. But I want that, in the water we said movement, in, you know, where we had the waves going in different directions and the different colors, and we use that kind of wavy hand. Same thing here. I'm mostly just pushing and pulling the paint around. I'm not really, this is not, you know, I'm not drawing rocks. I'm just kind of pushing and pulling the paint around to where I get texture. That's what I'm going for here, is texture. I want it to look kind of rocky. And it's not going to be perfect. It is not going to be perfect. It is not going to be true to life. You know, it is just my interpretation of a rock formation. So you can see what I did there. I just touched it in, and now I'm fading it out, and I'm making sure that I'm leaving some of the sand showing through. I do want to carry that rock formation is behind this cactus arm, so I'm going to make sure that I carry that through. And that is, let me show you real quick before it dries. That is a really harsh line, and I don't want that. So I'm just using my wet brush now, and I'm touching the tip of it, and I'm softening that down. I'm bringing that paint down. I'm gonna do the same thing in here in the arm of the cactus. You see? And I want to do that while it's nice and wet, because otherwise you're stuck with it. So I'm just softening that up. And then if I need a little bit color here, make it look a little bit more like a rock formation. I'm going to kind of change the direction up a little bit. Make sure that I have some definition there. Okay. And now we have a rock formation. We've got some color in here. We've got a little bit of texture. And again, we'll go back. Like, this is not done. We'll go back and we'll add more color in as needed. We want to add some of those darks in there to capture the really dark rocky areas as well. But we've got a good base in there, and now I know what I'm looking at. I've got some rock formations, and I've got some desert sand, and we are good to go there. So I'm going to just continue to kind of do that. I've got some more, looks like I've got some more rocky formations here, and I want to make sure that I fill those in. And I'm also going to add some green in here, some of the green, so we know that I don't have to fill this in entirely, but I just want to drop a little bit of the background color in there because I know that I'm going to use it. And my sky is dry now, so I can actually start moving this color up into the ones that are up into the sky. So I'm going to start doing that. And I'm still going to be careful with my sky, obviously, but I can play around a little bit more. I'm a little freer. So I'm going to start adding some of this same color, and you can get it wet first and then add it in, or you can just continue. My brush was pretty wet for this one, so I'm just going to keep going. And there are like different formations within formations back here, but most of them it's really dark on one side, and then it's got kind of jagged edges, and so I'm just kind of gonna outline it, and then just, and you can see I am holding my brush really far back. I'm barely touching the paper, and I am just touching the paint, the more heavy pigment around the edges of my rock formation, and then I'm just going in and kind of squiggling around some craggy rocks. Like it's messy. It's messy. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make sure that my edge is, I want my edges really dark because I want to have that. And then I'm just going to start adding in the rock formation. Now this rock one in the picture is more, you see they look more vertical, whereas this one does too, but it also had like this horizontal plateau, but these are more like up and down. So like we did with the water when we went side to side, we could start, if we're really trying to capture more detail, then we would want to start making our strokes more in that up and down. Like on here, like start bringing our paint in an up and down strokes instead of side to side. So it gives that same kind of illusion. And I'm gonna leave a lot of white on there. I'm not gonna worry about it. And I'm gonna fill it in with more color in a little bit. But now we have a very rough landscape right now. So I can see some places that I definitely want to work on, that I definitely want to have darker, that I want to add to. I can see some spots where I got out of formation here. I don't like how that looks. So I'm gonna be doing touch-ups to this with other colors anyway, but now's the time to kind of step back and look at it and go, okay, do I see anything that absolutely, like I left blank? Did I forget to go around an arm of a cactus? Anything like that? And I think we're pretty good. So we're going to didn't see what happens when you're not paying attention. I drug some of that wet paint into my sky, but that's okay. I can catch it early and I can dry it off. And I do know now as well that my sky is still a little bit too light. So since it's dry, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit darker blue up here. And then I'm just using my wet brush and spreading that down. because now that I got my rock formations in, I'm like, man, it needs to be a bluer day. So I'm just blending that in using just water so that I don't have a harsh blue line here. Paint as needed. I do want a little bit bluer in this corner. Just kind of bringing it in here. Maybe a little bit of my blue. There we go. It's a little bit better. And I think I'm going to add same thing. I'm going to go back in here and add a little bit more of my pink, because it kind of faded, that pinky purple that we used. Make sure that that's showing up, and go ahead and touch up some of my yellow. Make sure that you can see it. And don't lose my round shape there. Alright, so I'm a little happier with that. It probably doesn't look like I changed much to you in the video camera, but it is darker to me in real life. So okay, so while that is kind of drying, I want to make sure that all of this is dry. And this is pretty good. I don't want to start over there, so we'll start with some of these guys here. Same thing, we're gonna go lighter and then get darker. So we'll start on our cacti. I'm gonna use the first green here, this very yellow green, and I'm just gonna do a base coat on all of the cacti that I have here in that limey green. And I'm gonna just add it all in. And I'm doing wet to dry, so my paint's wet, my paper's dry for these, because I do want to have a little bit more control. I'm not wanting it to get outside my lines and go blend into my desert. So I am not wetting my cactus first. This little cactus is dry, and I'm just adding wet paint. Okay. And if you're careful up here, you can go ahead and do your big cactus. I just want to be sure that your sky and stuff is really dry before you start putting some green up there. And we're just going to fill in our cactus. Make sure that you fill it in. And I want some different textures and some layering, so I'm going to have other greens added in here. And we're going to have some spots that are darker and some spots that are lighter and all those things. But I want to get a good, just get a good base of color in here in all of these. cactus. Now these cacti have very obvious vertical stripes in them. The little round one has the same thing. It kind of looks like a watermelon, and then it has spikes on it, which are kind of white. So we're not going to be painting little white spikes on it, but we will go back in. We may use a pen and do that, and we'll see how it looks at the end. With the stripy ones, they also have barbs on them, kind of a golden brown color, but it's hard to see that in a watercolor painting. But if I zoom in for you guys, you see it's like very dark, and it's almost like they have holes there, and you can kind of see a little furry spikes on it. We're not going to be trying to make black dots all over these, because when you zoom out, you don't see black dots. You just see, but you do see the lines. So I'm going to use my little color chart that I did and look at some of my greens that I have. These are definitely more blue green. My yellow green we just used, the one next to it's more of a grass green, and then I had that army green, and that army green is probably going to be the one that we're going to use kind of to make those vertical stripes. I think that's probably our best bet. So that's that very last color on your palette, this very dark green. And I am just gonna, if you need to switch to your skinny brush, do it. But otherwise, I'm just gonna make skinny, using the tip of my brush, I'm just gonna make skinny stripes, vertical lines on these cacti, and see how it turns out. If I don't like it, I'll blend it in and I'll have darker cactus, but for now, I think that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna use I'm gripping my brush a lot further down because I'm trying to have control. So if you feel like you need to use the skinnier brush and make the skinny lines, you might be happier with that. I was trying to do this whole painting with just the one brush, so that may be my own mistake here, but we'll see. I'm just gonna, my paint palette to have plenty of water, and I'm gonna just do these skinny stripes. They don't have to be perfect. Our cactus is definitely not perfect, but you do need your cactus to be fairly dry for this. Like, I started with the ones I started in the light yellow and working my way that same way. Now, I am not trying to do one straight line all the way down. You can, but I want it to be a little bit broken. I don't necessarily want it to be super straight. It doesn't have to be a solid line. I'm just kind of like if I were sketching with a pencil. I'm just kind of moving my brush, just the tip of the brush, and doing these, look like watermelon right now, watermelon cacti here, doing these stripes. And I am, again, I'm okay if the lines are a little bit broken, if they're a little bit wonky. I'm not trying to make them perfectly straight, because that's what makes this unique and makes this yours. This is not a print that's been made 1,000 times, and every one of them looks alike. So I've added some stripes in there. Not sure I entirely love that, but we'll get there. So now I got stripes. It's looking less like a cactus and more like a cucumber now. So I am going to just take water on my brush and I am going to soften some of those, and I am literally just touching my lines and smoothing them out. I have a couple that are really dark. I'm not sure I like that at all. So while everything is still wet, I'm just going to kind of touch those with my wet brush. Now my brush is wet, like I dipped it in water, but I also dabbed it off. So I'm dipping and dabbing it so it's not completely saturated. I don't want to blend my stripes out entirely. I do want it to look like those vertical lines, but I also don't want it super heavy in some of these places. So I'm softening that up a little bit. And we're going to go back in and add more colors to those, but we're getting there. We're getting there. All right. I'm going to do the same thing, I think, with this little guy down here. And I think with this one, I'm going to make the whole, I'm going to use that second green, the kind of grassy green. I'm going to darken this whole little round cactus. I want it to be different than our big tall cacti, because it is different. So I'm going to make that one darker altogether. And I'm going to use a little bit of this purple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, second one in. And I'm going to, while that's wet, I'm going to dab some of that in there. A little too wet. And get a little purple shading. You can see that? I dropped the purple right in there. I'm going to have a little bit of contrast to it. It is not, and if you've ever looked at a cactus paddle, you can see they're all different kinds of shades of greens and oftentimes purples in there, and so I definitely want to have that in there. And then I think we're going to play with our rock formations a little bit more. So I'm going to use that second to the last row, this purple gray. We use that for the shading on our beach scene, and I'm going to use that for some of the shading in these rock formations, because I've got a lot of shadows up in here, and so I'm just going to kind of add some shadows in, try to make those rock shapes that we're seeing. Now this area right here, these two areas are bright, because that sun is there. So I'm gonna have most of my rocky shadows are gonna be more to the side over here on this far side. It's definitely more shadowed, and I'm gonna keep this middle area bright. So I'm probably, as a matter of fact, let's do second row, second one in. Let's do a little bit of orange and brighten that part up. We'll do the same thing over here. We may need to even use a brighter one, but I'm gonna make this pretty bright because that's where the sun is. And maybe some of the gold that we used in our sand, and also add that in here and just kind of touch it in here where we have the sun we know is shining. And we can also use some of the yellow that we used in the sky if you feel like it needs to be even brighter. And I'm just literally holding my brush way out here. I've got paint on the brush, and I'm just touching it into those spots to brighten that up. And I'm going to just keep going with some of this darker color, that purpley gray, and darkening up some of the shadows. So this rock formation here, got a little shadowing there. And now I'm concentrating a little bit more on that vertical movement, vertical texture that these have. So this one has these rock formations down here, and this is kind of a little plateau area. This is darker, way darker. So I'm just going to kind of keep going. If it gets too wet, like this is way too wet right here, so I don't want to play with that too much. Getting up into my sky. Messing with my sky there. I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead and stop there, and then go back and start adding some things in. So I'm gonna use this dark army green, and I can see in my inspiration picture there are more cacti back there sticking up. There's a bunch of brush. I may add some of that in just to break up this landscape a little bit. And so maybe I want to just do a little bit of kind of grassy look back here. I'm just using the tip of my brush, and I'm just, maybe I've got some kind of cactus shapes. Barely, kind of like we did with the island that we had in our beach scene. It's sort of the vision of palm trees that were on that island. It wasn't really palm trees, you know, we just did kind of that star shape. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing back in there. I'm just going to kind of blend that out into my rock formation. Can you see my little tiny cacti? Little tiny sort of cactus shapes. And I'm just going to kind of keep doing that along the bottom of that big. I'm just making kind of grassy shapes and blending it down with just water. Getting some of that green into here. I'll do the same thing along here, and maybe there's a little cactus. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's just greenery. Like, I'm just giving it a little bit of contrast back here. And if you don't like it, you can dab it out like that. You see I added another little tiny little cactus in the distance. And I want to do the same thing. I just want to kind of use water and blend that out. I don't want to lose my rock formation here. But I do want that green. I do want that green to show up. But that definitely needs to be a little darker. So I'm going to use some brown, I think. Let's see what happens if I do some brown along here. Yeah, I like that. So just the brown to bring out this particular rock formation, because it's in the front. And the same thing, I haven't retouched the brown paint. I just got it that one time. And now I'm just using my wet brush and kind of spreading it out, bringing it down. Now I'm going to get a little bit more brown because I want to highlight the edge there of this one. And this is dry paper, so I want to blend that a little bit better, so I'm going to use a wet brush. And I lost a lot of I think I was afraid of getting my cactus orange, so I got too much white around that cactus. There we go. All right, so now I've got that. This one could use a little bit. There's a lot of shadow over here, so I'm going to use that purpley gray. I'm going to add those shadows in over here. Get in between the arm of my cactus. Remember, we don't want to forget that. There's a lot of shadow in this rock formation, so I'm just going to touch some more of that purpley gray over in here. And get that color in. And then we have a lot of the greenery, so just continuing to use that army green. I'm going to start dropping just water again to spread that out. And I don't want it in a straight line, so I'm going to make it a little bit rough. Be careful here. I don't want to cover up my sand entirely, but I am going to have some greenery in here. And I'm going to start making it kind of look like bushes, just using the point of my brush and going kind of in an up and down. Now my paper is not wet over here like it was here, so I'm able to get a little bit more definition. And I'm just going to kind of keep doing that. Give it a little bit, and then just water, kind of blend that back down into my sand, because I don't want to lose that. And I'm going to get some more of my sand and start darkening it up. Start blending that out as needed. This is pretty light, so use that gold from the sand and start blending it in. maybe some of our oranges that we were using. Add some of them in here. Get some other colors blended in our desert scape. This is kind of that reddy orange. I don't want that one. That one's like a really red orange. You could put some of that in here in the foreground just to give it a little bit of color. And again, if it gets too heavy, just wet it and blend it out. And I want to really try to fill in now some of this white that I left because I was afraid of getting color in there. Try to get some of that over here. Some of that. Some of this color up in here maybe. I keep touching that red one, that reddish orange. I'm not sure I like it, but I don't not like it. So we'll just keep playing with that. And I'm just touching all the colors that we've been using. That's the gold, and I'm just dropping it in here and there and really filling in, getting a variation of color. This is very wet. This whole area is very wet now, so we got plenty of space to play. So now you can see we've left, this is nearly white of the page, but we've added a yellow and those brighter oranges down in here and up on the sides of both of these rocks, so that really pulls that sun down in here. This area here as well, the sun's coming down, so this side of our cacti is going to be lighter and this side will be darker. That'll be where the shadows go. So kind of be thinking about that as you're looking at where you're putting shadows and where your darks and lights are. But now we're starting to get a landscape. And if it looks a little rough to you, that's okay. We are going to keep playing with it, and we are going to add more shadows and shading. Whatever you do, do not erase your paper if it is wet. So if you see a line, like there was a stray pencil line there, I want to make sure that it is really dry. If you try to erase your paper while it's wet, you'll just tear your paper up. So, but I'm liking how it's looking. I lost my little cactus over here. Let's draw him back in. So if you, my sandy area now is really wet, so I'm not gonna be doing anything else in there right now. I want to just try to clean up these rock formations. I'm going to use some of these other colors here that we just used. I'm going to try to, I want there to be a distinct line that this is a different rock formation, but so I'm adding a little bit more of that reddy orange here just to kind of try to differentiate between this one and that one in the back. I want there to be a harsher line, just so you can see. I had used the brown earlier, but it still seemed to blend a little bit. So I'm just going to add some of those in. And then I think I feel pretty good about that. And I'm looking at my inspiration photo and thinking here, I think now I'm going to go in with that purple gray and use the tip of my brush and draw in oops, too much water. I want to draw in these lines on my little round cactus. And remember, we had added purple to that, well, that pinkish purple on here. So it has a little color variation in the background. So I've added stripes to it, and it's got multicolors because we had added that purple earlier, so I think that looks pretty cool. And what we may do with these cacti is use some, like I said, use some pen to do the other parts. So I'm going to use some more green here, the lighter green, and I'm going to kind of make sure that I shape out my cactus a little bit more. That one looked a little wonky. I'll do the same thing back here. If we lost any of our shape with our rock formation, just make sure my cactus is still showing up. And the same thing on here. There's a couple white spots. There's some areas that maybe need a little bit of color to them. Whoops, and you can see that's why you have to be careful. It leaked into my sandy area. But I'm gonna keep doing the vertical, whatever color I'm adding in, I'm gonna keep going up and down, kind of maintain that shape and maintain those stripes. I don't want to add any colors otherwise. Now I lost the arm here a little bit, so I'm going to use a darker. And I know, we just talked about that this side of my cactus is going to be a little bit darker because my sun is coming in this way. So I'm going to go ahead and use that army green again. And I'm just really going to kind of outline my arms of my cactus on this side here. Make sure that you can kind of see the shape, but knowing that if any shadows are happening, they're happening on this side. So I'm going to darken, use that army green and just kind of darken this side. And I'm just blending it in a little bit. And I know that I'm losing those stripes that we did, and I'm okay with that because we're going to kind of add them back in. They're still there if you look closely. They're still there, but I really want to get those shades in. So I'm going to go back in with my limey light green here. And I'm going to add that to this side and here where the sun is hitting. And make sure we're add a little bit on that one too. And make sure that you can still see all of that. I'm living dangerously here, trying to erase something right next to that, but I was feeling brave for a minute. All right, so now I can see a little bit of orangey that I want to fill in. There we go. All right, So now my cacti are all a little bit more vibrant. And I think, they're just sitting there, so I definitely want to add some greenery in there. So I'm going to use that dark green again. And I'm going to add some brushy stuff here at the base of some of these. And I'm just using the tip of my brush and kind of making grassy shapes and spreading them out. Again, not super specific. I'm not doing individual grass blades. I'm just making some brushy look along here. Back here, now that this is dry, I'm going to do some more of that back here. And then I'm going to use a little bit lighter of a green, so third green in, because the sun is shining through here. So this is more of a grass green. I'm going to do a little bit of green through here, and I'm just blending that out a little bit. I don't really want, again, that harsh line. I am going to take some more of that purpley gray over here, and I'm going to do some of the same things there, kind of blend that out. And then I need to let that dry. For a bit. I feel pretty good about like my rock formations. I'm fairly happy with them. Maybe a little bit more of a definition here, maybe. I think I lost some of it on the sky, but not too crazy. There we go. And a little bit more of the orange up in here. Kind of lost it too. So I'll kind of just a little bit of touch up there. Just to make sure that there is a distinct line there for my rocks. They don't blend too much. Make sure that I don't see all right, so I need to let this dry. So you can either let it dry or you can use the hair dryer. So I'm going to use the hair dryer and I'll be right back. All right, I have dried it off, I feel like, pretty well. There were a couple places that were really pretty wet. So now I'm just going to take a mix of that dark green, using some of the light greens. I'm just going to play a little bit with the greens and try to gently go in various shades and add some little nondescript grass and foliage. I'm not trying to to be detailed with it. I just want little green spots, you know, little greenery out here. Make it obvious that there's some grass growing. It's going to be lighter in this area where the sun is shining. So I'm going to have maybe some lighter, use the lighter yellow green, and have some grassy, I'm just doing kind of some grass there. And maybe there's some more of that over here coming off of my page. So I'm going to try to blend that in. And if you have anything that's too wet, remember, like, let it dry or use your hair dryer. Don't keep going and making a mess. I am bad about that. Like, when I'm painting, I just want to get done and I'm playing with it and I'm really into it, and so I have to remind myself that you got to stop once in a while and regroup, let it dry, because you'll just frustrate yourself if you keep going. So I'm just very lightly, you can see, just adding in, pick that out for you. There's nothing super exciting about this. I am just adding in little clusters of grass and other, it's not, I don't even know, I mean, other foliage that's out here in the desert. If you want something, you know, like, look at some more pictures if you're wanting to make something that looks more specific to a certain type of plant. But I'm just going to take these different shades of green and I'm going to just add some greenery, just add some shapes along here that in the dark green and the light green, and I'm just going to kind of add them in here and there. I also want to take, I'm going to use that purpley gray. I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow over here and blend it out. I'm going to do the same thing here. Add a little bit of a shadow. Under each of these. They may not have that much of a shadow, but I want to add a little something. Just to give it some depth. I think use some of that. It's too red. I'll use some of that orangey color over here. Kind of blend some of that out. I lost some of my color there. Same thing. A little darker over here. A little bit more of that orange. Bring that kind of back in here. Blended it a little too much last time and lost a lot of the orange when I was adding the green, so I'm going to add some more of that back in and just kind of touch and color, and again, not being afraid to leave some spots that are, I'm going to use some brown, get my brown wet, maybe touch in some brown. brown stuff growing here. Maybe there's some things back there. Got some brown stuff growing here. And that sideways motion like we did with the water, I'm just adding in a little texture movement here. It is not specific to anything. I'm not doing any special stuff. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit of that bright yellow, this second color, and I'm gonna add a little bit right here to the top of that. To the front face of this one and kind of the side of that one, a little bit right here on the top of this one. I want to capture some of that sunlight so we know that this side is lighter. Excuse me. So we know that we've got a little sunlight there. And now I'm gonna leave it alone. Put my brush down and I'm going to back away from it for a minute and try to take a look. Oh no, this is a weird angle, but if y'all can see that, it's looking pretty good. Like, I'm afraid if I mess with it too much, I'm gonna overblend it. I'm gonna do too much. So I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna let it dry, or hit it with a hair dryer, and then we'll come back in and we'll do some stuff with the pen. Okay, so let me dry it. All right. Yeah, it's really nice and dry, and it's the paint tape is off, and it looks pretty darn good actually. So I am going to add some stuff in. I'm not going to do any more on the background. That's why I was okay taking the tape off. But I do want to do a little bit more defining. And I do see, I just said that, and then I do see something I don't like here. Hold on. I lost a little bit of my rock formation there. Add a little bit of brown there. Okay. Now we're good. So what I want to do okay, I feel better now. So now what I want to do is I want to go back in. My style, typically, I like to use pen. I like to do a lot of line drawing. And that is kind of the way I do most of my watercolors as well. However, not all of them. So if you are happy with your painting where it's at, and there's nothing wrong with this painting, it's fine. But I want to add in some details, and I really want to focus on. So I have this, this is a Jelly Roll pen. I got at Michael's. Actually, it's called Jelly Roll, but it's a white gel pen. This shows up for me. There may be other ones out there that work just as well. I don't find that acrylic paint pens come in a thin enough tip for the fine detailing that I want to do. So I like this. I usually use the gel pen. I've tried a couple different ones, but I like the little Jelly Roll. This one shows up really well. And then I always have the Sharpie, like we use in class. I have the Sharpie permanent markers, the micro. You can buy other brands too, but the important thing with the Sharpie, I'm going to use this at the end, so it doesn't really matter. But the important thing with the Sharpie or any one that you use instead is that it is waterproof, because a lot of times I'm using this to sketch on details before I paint. I use this a lot within my paintings, and so I want it to be waterproof. You want it to be a permanent marker. So any pen or marker that you use, make sure that it's waterproof. Test it out on something. And you could have some in your drawer, ballpoint pens in the junk drawer in your kitchen or whatever, that are actually waterproof. You just write on some paper and then get it wet and see what happens. But you just want something that when you paint over it is not going to smear because you did all that work. So I'm probably not going to use any more paint at this point, but I always like these. And you can get these anywhere. And actually, a lot of times you'll find them at the Dollar Tree by the register. So I happen to have a bunch of packages of them because recently I forgot that I bought some the last time and bought more. And then I said the Jelly Roll pen I did find at Michael's, but any kind of a white pen is handy to have. I have tons of paint markers and stuff, but I don't tend to use them because you don't have that micro fine point. So with this, I'm going to use the black one, and I'm just going to kind of go in and re-add those, sketch those lines into my cacti. Now, I am not trying to make straight, beautiful, perfect lines. Can you see that? I am doing sketchy, erratic, kind of sketchy lines on that cactus, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing on all of them. I'm not outlining them. I'm not making, I don't want this to look like cartoon cacti now. I just want to give the shape back to them and get those stripes that we have. So I'm going to do that on all of these, including my little round guy, because it has these round lines, and I'm gonna just kind of do sketchy stripes on my big guy too. And I'm not trying, I mean, it's a black marker, but I'm not trying to go super dark with it either, but I do want to maintain the shape of my cactus. And I'm just trying to, I can do some long ones on this guy, some short ones. I'm not trying to do 3 stripes per arm or whatever. We're just kind of sketching in some stripes, okay? And then if we zoom in here on our little round guy, we can see all the white spikies. So that's what we're going to use our white pen for. And I'm just gonna draw spikes, and they go down each of those kind of stripes. They line either side of them. So I'm gonna go, see, I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna go on either side of those lines that I drew. And I'm just gonna keep on adding spikes. And I'm just adding little jaggedy lines. And I want some that stick off the side of the cactus because that's real life. Give it that dimension. And I'm gonna add those all over my cactus. And that just brings that little guy to life. Now you can kind of do the same thing if you want to. You can add a few. I would not put that many on my on my other cactus. You can't really see the ones that are further out, but I might make a few little dots just to, you can barely see those, but this is more obvious. These guys are not, but I'm going to add a little bit here and there just to show that there's something there. In real life and in these pictures, theirs looks a little bit more of a golden brown. You could get a golden brown pen and you could do this, but the way the sun's shining on them, they might show up white. So I am just making, not going down every stripe. I'm just doing a few here and there, making sure you have some that come off of the side of the cactus. They're not all just on the front. And so just a little bit in there. You see at that angle. And that's pretty good. So I feel pretty good about that. If you want to add a little bit more definition to like some of your grasses, you can always kind of go in and add a little bit of sketchy grasses in here. Add a little bit of shading. I just kind of, not every strip of grass needs some definition, but sometimes it does, and I tend to do a little bit of that. I like pen work. Told you guys that went to my class with the flowers. I tend to add pen work. That is just something that I like. Not everybody does, and that's okay. So if you were happy with your painting where it was, then leave it alone and don't do this part. But if you like the idea of adding in some pen work, then it does change it up a bit. See, it's just some messy, scribbly work, but I like the way that looks. And I might add some back here. Just kind of define my cacti back there in the back again. But I don't really want to mess with it too much back there because I like the way those look. But I might add a few places around like my rock formations just to denote that that's what they are. But I don't want it to be a drawing. Like I don't want to trace every bit of my rock formation. I want it to be a little bit more natural, but maybe some of these darker areas where I added the paint, I can add a few little jaggedy, rocky areas and give it just a little bit of dimension. But that's up to you. You can totally play with this and keep playing with it, and you can kind of go crazy with it, or you can leave it alone. Like I said, this was a perfectly lovely painting before I started adding the lines to it, but like I said, this is more my style. I do enjoy the line work afterwards. I don't know why, but it is something that I like to play with. So I'm just going to add a few here and there. And now, just sign it. Be sure you sign your work. And so I added in line work in my rocks and stuff. So, like I said, that's up to you. But there is a desert painting using very similar techniques to what we used on our beach scene. And we used the white of the paper for that sunny area. And we did a lot of blending. And we did a lot of layering. And you can just play with it. Have some fun. Try something out of your vacation photos. Go out to unsplash.com and find a picture that you like. Like I said, ours was an inspiration photo. We definitely did not make it look exactly like the inspiration photo, but took parts that I liked out of it and made it my own. So there you go. I hope you guys try it. Those of you that are on the Facebook page, you know, can comment and post pictures in the Diva and Dude group and in the comments here and say that you tried it and maybe post a picture. So hopefully that's another lesson for you. You guys can have fun with it and maybe feel free to, or freer to experiment with some pictures of your own. So hope you guys have a great day and keep painting.